It is an article of faith in this country that Americans can freely worship or not, according to our beliefs or our lack of belief. And we can voice our opinions about religion or politics or anything else. Those are fundamental, monumental freedoms, and they come from the very same sentence in the Bill of Rights. And thus comes the passionate and sometimes painful exercise known as the Ground Zero Mosque debate. If you haven't been keeping up, it centers on plans to build a $100 million Islamic community center with a mosque in it, 2 blocks from the site of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. Opponents have argued that it dishonors the memory of the 9/11 victims, and many of them take issue with Islam itself. That view is not confined to Manhattan. Recently, in the California town of Temecula, protesters confronted Muslim worshippers over plans to build a mosque next to a church. One of the protesters' signs read, "Muslim danced with joy on 9/11. But a group of California religious leaders don't want that to be the final word. Today they gathered in Los Angeles in defense of religious liberty in general and the Ground Zero Mosque in particular. I'm joined now by Rabbi Jonathan Klein from the group called Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, and Jihad Turk. He's the Director of Religious Affairs at the Islamic Center of Southern California. I also want to bring into this discussion CNN's own senior legal analyst, Jeff TOOBIN. Jeff, good to have you here. Thank you for being with us.
Allie.
I want to go out to these gentlemen. We had a great conversation an hour ago. Rabbi Klein and Jihad Turk, thank you for being with us. Jihad, I want to ask you this. I've had a number of comments on my Facebook page, and I've seen them elsewhere, where people say moderate Islam, mainstream Islam, has not done enough in America to distance itself from that has created the impression that Islam is a religion of fundamentalists or extremists or terrorists. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I would disagree with that strongly. I mean, we're kind of the new kids on the block here in the United States, and we don't have a well-oiled media machine that can represent the views of what most Muslims believe and feel here in the United States. We tried our best. I mean, 9/11, our community knew us. On the day of 9/11, the Christian and Jewish community, as they came here today, they came out here and they said, "We know you, we know what you represent," and they came to make sure that there was no backlash against our community. And we've been receiving that, you know, what I think is the great American spirit of generosity and hospitality and inclusion ever since. But with regards to trying to shape public perception about Islam and Muslims, that's been our biggest challenge. We tried, for example, issuing a fatwa, and we called all the great, major news, local and national news agencies, and we issued a fatwa. Now, fatwa in common perception is a death threat. So we knew that the media would come, and we got tons of media here. And we issued the fatwa in concert with every major Islamic organization in the United States and in Western Europe. And on that day, we issued the fatwa stating that we condemn 9/11, we condemn terrorism, and we made it mandatory on all faithful Muslims around the world and in the United States and Western Europe in particular to work with local law enforcement agencies to ensure that another attack does not happen here in U.S. soil ever again. So no one ever heard of that. I mean, it might have gotten coverage, but when you get someone frothing at the mouth in a cave somewhere, it just makes better media than when we try and have civil conversations with our Jewish and Christian and other American neighbors.
Rabbi Klein, not everybody's every group you can find is divided on this issue, including the Jewish community, which has often represented the best aspects of freedom of religion and defense of people's rights to do things. New York Governor David PATERSON chimed in on this. Yes, well, you should be. David PATERSON on Larry King Live on Wednesday had this to say about a potential compromise. I want to get your response to this. First, let's listen to what Governor PATERSON had.
People put their heads together. Maybe we could find a site that's away from the site now, but still serves the catchment area. That would be a noble gesture to those who live in the area who suffered after the attack on this country, and at the same time would probably, in many ways, change a lot of people's minds about Islam, which is really a peaceful religion practiced by peace-loving people.
Those are not inflammatory words, Rabbi Klein. In fact, those are sentiments that have been, they've been issued by a number of people. What do you think of that idea? Those who say you've got a right to be there, but it's not so good that you're going to be there.
Right. I think that it's a tough position for the Muslim community today. They're in a very tough position because they really do want to work with the larger American society to feel safe and comfortable, and so now they're being asked to shift gears a little bit here. I understand the sentiment of Governor Patterson, but I also understand the value of the community itself deciding, because it really does have freedom of religion, and it does have the freedoms that we all cherish in our American society. We have such a wonderful Constitution and Bill of Rights that preserves the rights of minority communities to flourish in this society. I think the governor's sentiments are understood, and I appreciate the tone of trying to build community here. But ultimately, I think the Muslim community should come to the conclusion itself as to how they want to move forward.
And if I could say here, Ali, I think it's, I was going to say, I think it's really important to consider this community in particular and what they're trying to accomplish. Calling itself the Cordoba House was an attempt to be PR savvy and trying to really get the message out there to separate the mainstream Muslim community from those who would want to do harm to this country. Cordoba is reminiscent of a time in which Muslims, Jews, and Christians, a golden era, according to Rabbi Moses ben Maimon, or Maimonides, who was a Jewish reformer and thinker and philosopher. He called it the golden age of Judaism, living in harmony with Muslims and Christians at that time. And I think the individuals, despite their vilification on certain unnamed news outlets, are actually very progressive and civic-minded individuals. And although Imam Rauf, who I know, might have said some critical comments about our foreign policy, I think you're going to find critical comments about our foreign policy by high-ranking
from lots of circles,
government officials and policymakers.
Let me bring in
part of what it means to be American is to be critical of government.
Let me bring Jeff TOOBIN into this for a second, my good friend and our senior legal analyst. The good part about this whole discussion, in my opinion, is that we very quickly established the legality around the situation, that there is a right to set this mosque up, and there's not a legal debate, but it's got all the trappings of every legal debate you've ever been involved in, whether it's abortion or it's civil rights or anything like that. It feels like a legal debate.
It feels like a legal debate, but in fact, there is no legal controversy at the moment. In fact, the government of New York City is enthusiastically backing the Islamic Center. Mayor Michael Bloomberg gave an uncharacteristically emotional speech in front of the Statue of Liberty talking about how the Muslims had a right to build a cultural center wherever they wanted. But the idea that a religious group can be forced, compelled, even if it's not by law, out of something they have a right to do, certainly has a legal feel.
Does that, well, that, and as somebody who follows the law, is that threat of coercion, is that dangerous to the law? In other words, if we have protections, but we can coerce people into doing something that the protections would otherwise protect their right to do?
Well, I mean, the law can't change people's hearts. You know, the law can only decide what the government does and what the courts do. And if people want to protest, if people want to express their feelings against Islam, for Islam, the law protects their right to do that. But the law also says that if you want to allow religious institutions to build, you have to allow all religious institutions to build. You can't say it's okay to have a Catholic church there, it's okay to have a synagogue there, but it's not okay to have a mosque there. And that's why I think the Islamic Cultural Center in Lower Manhattan is on such strong grounds legally, because you can't draw distinctions between religions, and Mayor Bloomberg has said, we're not going to do that.
Well, all of you, we could go on for hours on this, and perhaps we will actually at some point. But I want to thank you all for being here and for such a enlightened conversation from all of you on this one. Jeff, always great to see you. Rabbi Jonathan Klein, the Clergy for Laity and United for Economic Justice in Los Angeles, and Jihad Turk, the Religious Director of the Islamic Center of Southern California. Thanks very much to all of you. I suspect we will have another chance to talk. All right, it is back to school time, but a word of warning. Many school districts are changing